So should I do a bachelor's in supply chain management or a master's or an MBA? This is a very common question that I keep getting from my subscribers on YouTube or my followers on LinkedIn. So I thought I would make a dedicated video to dissect all the key factors that go behind this decision. My name is Jameel Hye, and I've been working in supply chain management positions across South Asia, Middle East, and North America for the last 20 years. And my mission is to help you build real life skills for your job and career that they don't teach you in college. And if you are preparing for a supply chain job interview anytime soon, you should definitely book a session with me, because I'm going to take your resume, the job description you're applying for, and based on a combination of those two, will give you some laser guided tips and tricks which will maximize your chances of success. So go ahead now and book your session. So first, I'm going to talk about the bachelor's program, and if you are in that stage where you are about to decide whether you should go for a bachelor's in supply chain management or not. So I'll talk about that first. And if you are watching this video for the master's program, then you should go to this timestamp that you see on the screen, because I will first cover the bachelor's program and then we'll talk about the master's program in a bit here. So let's first talk about the bachelor's program. Now, the first thing you need to consider if you have just graduated from high school and you are considering a bachelor's program in supply chain and whether you should even do a bachelor's or not, one very important thing to keep in mind is the importance of 16 years of education. No matter what you hear on the social media, that undergraduate degree is no longer needed and you can get certifications to get started on a job, I still strongly recommend that you should definitely complete 16 years of education. Whether you do it in supply chain or not, that's a different discussion. We'll come to that in a second. But do complete 16 years of education, because you will hear stories like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg, for example, is a college dropout, or you will also hear some other names which are thrown around typically when this discussion happens. Now, those are very exceptional cases, and Mark Zuckerberg, as an example, would have been successful no matter what he did in life, because he was a genius and he had a very strong business idea and he was very strong in certain areas like coding and so on. But if that's not the case, which is the majority of all of us, we do need a 16-year education, because when you'll go for your first job interview or you will apply for your first jobs in some shape or form, it will always start with where did you study or what did you study. And what did you study is, of course, even more important than where did you study, because that basis of the 16-year education, whether you do engineering, whether you do something else, really lays the foundation of your personality in a lot of different shapes and forms. So definitely do pursue a 16-year college degree, because that's really the bedrock of your professional foundation. Now, if you are watching this video because you love supply chain, you have just graduated from high school, or you are about to make a decision of going for a bachelor's program, so if you are really, really convinced that supply chain is the way to go and that's where you want to build your career, which unfortunately at that age, not a lot of people have thought through this to that level of detail that they really want to get into supply chain, because supply chain is not like general engineering or medical science and so on, right? So normally kids, when they are 18, 19 years old, they are very clear that, oh, I want to become a doctor, I want to become an engineer, I want to become a lawyer, or I want to become a businessman or an accountant and those kind of things, right? Very few people will think about supply chain, but that is changing now, because supply chain is becoming more and more mainstream. When I graduated 22 years ago, at least in the part of the world where I grew up in, we did not even have a degree program in supply chain or an undergrad program in supply chain. So people would typically become engineers and come into supply chain like I have done. But now you guys are lucky that if you really want to pursue a career in supply chain, then you can actually do an undergrad program. I strongly recommend doing an undergrad or a bachelor's program in supply chain more than a master's degree. Because that will, first of all, you have to do an undergrad program anyways. If you do it in supply chain, then you are going into a very specialized industry from a very early stage of your life. And then supply chain offers you a lot of different flavors of jobs when you come out. It's not like, for instance, aeronautical engineering that, if you have done aeronautical engineering, then you can only go and work for a very selected group of companies around the world. You can either work for an airline, or you can work for the government, or like for the Air Force and those kind of things, right? But if you choose to do an undergraduate degree in supply chain, then you can work for a huge variety of companies. You can work in oil and gas, you can work in consumer goods, you can work in hospitals, and you name it, right? So supply chain is an industry which is getting more and more recognition. So if you are really convinced this is the way to go for you, then definitely go and pursue an undergrad program in supply chain. The third point you need to consider is prefer an undergraduate degree or program with a lower cost as compared to going for a program with a very high ranking or in a highly ranked university. This is something which I have covered also in detail in my recent video on the top 10 undergraduate universities for supply chain programs in the United States. And the point I also made in that video was that don't try to get into the number one university and then pay a huge tons of money for that kind of program, even if it's not in your state, or even if you're not getting a scholarship for that program, because the worst thing you can do to yourself is get out of college or graduate or complete your undergraduate program with an extremely high level of student debt. Because student debt is, after credit card, probably the worst debt you can imagine. And I know people personally who are repaying their student loans into their 40s or sometimes even more. So it doesn't make sense at all to take on a lot of student debt. So as you, let's say, make a short list of the programs that you will be applying for, or universities you'll be applying for your undergraduate degree in supply chain, try to prefer the university which is giving you either a scholarship, or if you are already based in US or Canada, try to go for your local university in your local state or province, because as an in-province student in Canada or an in-state student in the United States, you'll be paying much less fee as compared to being an international student or an out-of-state student. So that's number 3. And number 4, do select an undergrad program that gives you internship opportunities. One thing which I have mentioned so many times on my videos is that supply chain, what makes it very different than a lot of other industries, it's a very, very experiential industry. So your work experience matters more than anything else. So if you are going for an undergraduate program where you'll be spending about 4 years in a university or a college, then do look for programs that offer internships, because during those 4 years, then you'll get an opportunity to also work in the industry, get a flavor. I've seen so many examples where I have coached students or I have hired interns from universities or colleges during their undergrad programs. And because they already built such strong relationships in the companies they were interning in, the moment they came out of college, they got a job right off the bat. So doing internships not only helps you understand like which industry do you enjoy working for more than others, but it also helps you build those networks which will eventually help you land your first job. The next thing to consider is that if you have already done a bachelor's degree in supply chain, then don't even think about doing an MBA or a master's. Staying in university or college for an extended period of time, and then you think that, oh, if I do a master's in supply chain, it will really open a lot of doors for me. That's not the case. As soon as you graduate, try to find a job, get your experience, because your experience is going to be way more important than doing an MBA in supply chain. Again, when you have done bachelor's in supply chain, you have already learned a lot of things that are covered in supply chain. So there is nothing new that you are going to learn in an MBA or a master's degree program as far as supply chain goes. So try to get what you will learn, or let's say you have the choice of after your undergraduate program, you have the choice of spending 2 years more and getting a master's degree in supply chain, or you have got 2 years to work in the industry. What you are going to learn in those 2 years in the industry is going to be way more than what you learn inside a classroom. So if you have done a bachelor's in supply chain, don't even think about a master's degree or an MBA in supply chain at all. Now let's move to the second part of this video, which is factors that go into making a decision whether you want to do an MBA in supply chain or not. And this is for those people who have not done their bachelor's in supply chain. So if you have done your bachelor's in another industry, or let's say you are an engineer, or you are a pharmacist, or you have done your undergrad in any other industry and you're interested now in coming into supply chain, and your question is that should I do a master's of business administration or a master's of science in supply chain or not? So let's think about a few factors that you should consider here. The first thing is that if a master's program in supply chain will help you in your efforts to migrate to a new country, definitely go for it. There are so many students in India or in Pakistan or in other parts of the world who would be interested in supply chain, and they may probably even worked in supply chain in their home countries. But then when they are trying to move to the US, they are trying to get a student visa to US or Canada, and they would land a supply chain master's degree program. And if that is your way to immigrate to a country of your choice, then by no means go into a master's in supply chain, because you have already, first of all, you have got interest in supply chain. That's probably why you are watching this video in the first place. And especially for those who have already gotten experience in supply chain. I've consulted so many of my clients in my coaching calls who are working in India and Amazon or in other companies, and they have landed an MBA or an MS in supply chain, and that is what has gotten them their visa to come to the US or come to Canada. That's a very good route of getting to a new country. So if that's the case with you, then definitely a master's degree in supply chain is worth it. The second condition in which a master's degree could be worth it is if your company is sponsoring your master's degree or master's certificate program fully or partly. If that is the case, then by no means close your eyes and go and do that program, because then you're not even paying for it, right? And your company is investing in you, which is a great sign. So take advantage of that. So if you have an opportunity, for example, like I did my master's program, although it was not a full-blown master's, it was a condensed master's program in supply chain. And one of the reasons why I chose that program and I went and did a master's program at that stage was it was basically partly paid by my company. They paid for a big chunk of it, and therefore it made sense for me to pay for the program. And the other advantage is that if you're living in US or Canada and you are investing in yourself, you are investing in like a master's degree, and if you've got like partial support from your company, for the remaining support, you also get some tax credits, right? Because if you are investing in yourself, the way the tax structures are in these countries, they will actually incentivize you to invest in yourself. So if those are the cases where there's a company investment happening and then you can minimize the true cost of that program to yourself by also getting some additional tax credits, then go for it. But if one of these two reasons are not valid, or which is either a master's degree is not helping you move to another country of your choice, or if it is not funded by someone else than yourself, then I really don't see a value in doing a master's, at least in supply chain. I'm not talking about any other industry here. This is purely a supply chain channel, as you know, because if one of those situations are not valid, then the value of an MBA or a master's in supply chain is not really worth it. You should, in that case, if you are really interested in, upskilling yourself in a different way, go for certifications, go for the APIC certifications, go for the ones that I've mentioned in my video on the top 5 certifications in supply chain, which you can watch by clicking over here. But spending a ton of money to get an MBA or a master's in supply chain, unless those first two conditions are valid for you, I don't recommend at all. And then the question becomes that, okay, if I don't have a master's in supply chain, then how can I enter supply chain if I'm in a different industry? Well, you don't have to have a master's degree in supply chain to enter supply chain from another industry. And you should watch my video on how you can enter supply chain from another profession, where I've covered 3 or 4 different scenarios in which you can enter supply chain, even if you have not studied supply chain as a subject, which you can watch by clicking over here. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I've also made videos and podcasts on topics like how to upskill yourself in AI in supply chain and how to land a job at Amazon, which you can watch by clicking over here. Keep watching.